Good afternoon, everyone. This is Trackman 44. You know, with the advent of the fall weather, you know, and the impending cold weather, you know, of the winter coming on, you know, we always get ready cutting wood and all that kind of stuff, you know, and we've been doing that here the last couple of days. I had a couple of videos here, you know, in the wood pile, you know, cutting a little bit, moving logs around and stuff. But last night, son-in-law and the daughter stopped by the house, and son-in-law expressed a desire to get the old saw rig fired up, and so he can go ahead and cut some of the pole wood, because we kind of like to get a mixture in the woodshed. You know, if you just put all your pole wood in one pile, you know, you might get stuck with that doggone stuff, you know, which burns fairly quickly. You'll get stuck for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, just doing nothing but running back and forth to the woodshed, you know, keeping the stack in the house full, you know, because that pole wood does have a tendency to burn up so much quicker, because it lacks the heartwood and has so much more of a greater percentage of sapwood. You know what I mean? And the density, you know, and the intense heat comes from the heartwood, or the solid wood in the middle, and not necessarily the sapwood. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm kind of freshening the blade up. This particular one here I did a long time ago, and converted it for 3-point also. But I put a right angle gearbox underneath the rig itself, to where the part takeoff shaft comes right off tractor, right straight into that right angle gearbox off that John Deere haybind. This works a lot more conveniently as far as I'm concerned, and there's no belt slippage, you know, on that input, like there might be on the right angle drive up that long distance to the flat drive that runs the arbor. This one here still has a drive belt, but it's a much shorter, closer coupled, and it very seldom ever loses any tension, so we never ever suffer any slippage. But at any rate, I was gonna freshen this little baby up and get it ready for the son-in-law. Got to grease it, touch the teeth up and everything, you know. I'll give you a little quick once over of it. This old rig sat down in the woods at my neighbor lady's house for years and years and years, and originally it was nothing more than this A-frame right here, and this shaft coming across here. It had none of the 3-point material, the right angle gear drive or anything like that. This thing was just staked to the ground with 4 posts or 4 stakes on the 4 corners of the bottom angle iron. And the old boy years and years ago ran this with a 5 horsepower 220 volt electric motor with one belt that ran around this crown pulley to that motor down on the ground. And I guess it did a pretty good job for him. You know, I don't know, I did not see it run back in the day, but my neighbor lady gave it to me, and then I converted it by building the 3-point A-frame, and of course the right angle drive off of that John Deere, and it's complete with a slip clutch inside there, and then of course a power takeoff shaft, which is direct coupled to the back of the tractor. And then of course I had to put this jack shaft on with that carrier bearing in order to transfer that power from the right angle drive up here to the arbor. And so it does really a pretty good job. I like my rusty old tractors, but I like my orange ones too. Now this guy here is a B7100, 16 horse. I've had this thing here since 1982, but it does a fine job, and use it consistently for all kinds of small tasks around the place. But here lately, I pretty much delegated it down to where it pretty much stays attached to the 3-point rig, unless there's something in particular we really need to use the utility of this small tractor for. But this thing will run that saw rig literally all day long on no fuel at all, essentially. Now that's an exaggeration. You know, if we run real hard, we may burn 2 gallons in an entire day, and a hard day at that, running wide open. I don't know if y'all have your own buzzsaw or not, and I don't know how you sharpen your teeth. Last year, I started when I did that other saw rig for that Ford tractor. I decided to use that Foley bell saw sharpening setup, and that's what I serviced that blade on that other rig, and swore I'd never do it by hand again. But I lied. You know, I'm gonna do it by hand here real quick, because this one's in actually pretty good shape. It just needs mild touching up. I don't really need to do a bunch of grinding. But what I like to do is I like to keep a dedicated file just for nothing, no other purpose other than sharpening the saw rig. And there's just a piece of Armaflex to protect it, because there ain't nothing worse than throwing a good sharp file in a toolbox and have it beat and rattle around on it. It just gets all, you know, knocked off in no time. Now this is, you might have to put your earplugs on, because this is kind of tough. Now like I say, I don't know how y'all sharpen your saw blades. I see a lot of people do it in a lot of different ways, but I like to sharpen the face of my tooth right here, and I don't like to do this except for one final pass on top. In case it curls over the top, I'll knock that off a little bit. But I see a lot of guys sharpening the back side of their teeth like this, and then if you start looking at the teeth, they get daubed off, and then all of a sudden, you know, the back end of the tooth is actually coming in contact with the wood, as the teeth gets really badly misshapen. But I'll take every other tooth. And go like such. The set is going that direction, so I've got to file these teeth that way, and the other teeth will have to be filed this direction because the set comes this way. That's the more difficult side to do on the saw because I've got to, kind of stretch out over the top of that. It's a little bit on the difficult side, but you'll get the idea. Is that hurting your ears yet? There's no set number of times that you have to hit a tooth. You have to, that gut feeling everybody talks about? You kind of, after a period of time, you develop a gut feeling when it comes to these things. You go by sight, you go by feel, and you go by gut. Now, if you notice, I've got about a, 10, 11 degree angle or something like that. I'm not filing perfectly straight across like this. I've got an angle, and the other side, conversely, is going to be about the same angle the opposite direction. But, and you don't rock your file like this, you end up with a rounded tooth. You want it nice and square, nice and cut square. This is a highly technical piece of machinery right here. Ain't everybody got a perfect 2x4 sitting around. I'll show you what I mean. This got a custom wire actually hang on the saw rig. It sits there 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. It only comes into play whenever I touch the blade up. Hey, man. Speaking of the devil, my son-in-law stopped by. Yeah, my son-in-law stopped by for a minute. Doggone it. I'm not going to take the time and show you, all the way around the saw, but you got the understanding, the basic understanding. You've got to get a slight angle on the set going that direction, as well as the slight angle in the opposite direction on the opposing teeth. And then once I get done, I'll show you how the old-timers set them with ball-peen hammers. You can tell by the sound of that material that is hard material there. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to get a real fluid motion going. But once you get into the swing, you get a fairly fluid stroke. I'll give you an idea of how slick it really is once you get into the swing. I only do this every, twice a year or something like that. So, I get out of practice. But when I'm not concentrating on trying to make a video, you just let everything become fluid. You just need to create a fluid motion. Tell you another tip too. You always kind of sight the front end of the tooth. And you'll be able to see as you remove that metal, you'll see that tooth just shine up. And then you can actually watch how you're sharpening a tooth by the shiny part, how it's appearing, and what you're actually doing to the tooth. And you can clearly see the shiny surfaces of the teeth we just sharpened on the other side. And this is where the cheese gets a little binding, so to speak. Unless you're totally ambidextrous, like my dad always said, ample dextrous, but unless you're totally ambidextrous, you just have a heck of a time starting off getting the left side, because you just have to get that flow pattern again. You have to establish those movements, and you don't do it every day. Get a little rusty at it. So the first few teeth will be a little bit aggravating, and my jacket keeps getting caught on the teeth, but it don't matter. Again, I see a lot of people sharpen the back side of the tooth, and if you look at some of those blades, I think I did a video on some that was really badly shaping blade, and you can see how people just end up just sharpening, just changing the tooth geometry tremendously, and get it to where it won't do anything except burn its way through the wood, and that's not cool. However, may I take this moment to point out that I'm not a professional saw sharpener. So if you take what I say with a grain of salt, and then take about 75 cents at McDonald's, that'll buy you a cup of coffee. Like I said, that's a highly technical piece of equipment there. But I was around the old man, you know, hundreds and hundreds of times sharpening saws like this and many other types of saws. There's just no set number of strokes that you take. You just have to take a look and make sure you can see how the tooth is shaping and what you're doing to it. And then whenever you have it looking the way you need, which typically for me is 5 to 8 strokes, somewhere in that general area, unless I'm doing it left-handed. Like I say, every one of my strokes just isn't absolutely perfect, but you want to make an attempt to not wiggle and jiggle or roll like this. You know, you want to make sure you try to maintain that 10-degree angle out or whatever, you know, in the two different directions, in the direction in which the set is going on the teeth. So if you notice, I make 4 or 5 passes, you know, and I'll hit the file like that. I'm just knocking the gunk out of the teeth on the file. I guess you call them teeth, I don't know. And then just go ahead and put her back in the protective sheath made out of Armaflex. Hey, let's take a look at this now. Now, if you look as I rotate this blade, you can actually see one tooth go to the left, one tooth go to the right. That creates the kerf that relieves the wood so that it doesn't pinch the blade and cause the blade to overheat. It just removes that material, and you want that set to be about 25%, somewhere like that, the total width of the tooth. So if the tooth is let's just pick a number. I can't remember what the width of this blade is. Say it's 3/16 of an inch. So you want to be maybe stick out that way, maybe a quarter of that 3/16, and then maybe a quarter of that 3/16 the other direction, and that'll be enough to relieve the pressure of that blade slipping through that wood, especially in wet wood. But if you take a look in there, you can actually see as those teeth come around, it's still got pretty good set. But I promised you I'd show you how to set it with ball peen hammers, so that's what we're going to do next. You don't want to put too much set in. If you put too much set in it, what that does, that puts excessive pressure on the blade. And when this thing is going around, you got to think of this in terms of a big long blade, straight blade instead of a circular blade. But as you're coming around and going into that wood, it's putting back pressure back here in the back. So the wider that the set is, the more pressure it puts on there, and the more it wants to make that blade wiggle. Now I know that sounds silly for you to think about, but you'll actually put enough pressure on this thing to where it wants to bend that blade. Well, once it starts wiggling back and forth, you know, a few thousand times, it work hardens. It's already hardened material, but it work hardens even worse, and then it'll begin fracturing at different places around the blade, and then that creates somewhat of an issue. So at any rate, I'm gonna get a couple of ball peen hammers. We're gonna set this puppy. Now I'm gonna start here at my mark, and hopefully I'll be able to get you to see it good enough. Now again, every other tooth is going to go every other direction. Now if you notice, there's a crown on the edge of your ball peen hammer. We're going to use that as the anvil to break that over. So hopefully I can get this right about here. And if you see, that's just got a little bit sticking over the top of that edge. And we're just going to take it right here. Now this is very awkward because I'm dodging the camera. But I'm going to go just like that right there. That one I got a little too much set in. I could feel it. I could feel it give. Well, I'm going to go all the way around on this tooth, and then go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Y'all don't need to see the entire blade, but you kind of got to look right up here top of the blade. And if you use your imagination, as I rotate the blade, you should be able to see what appears to be a pair of angles that looks like that. And you see what appears to be the groove. Okay, now that we got our reasonably well serviced, let me see a show of hands. Who wants to go see it? See if it'll cut any? Well, let's pass a couple of chunks of wood through it and see what happens. I think I can count at least 2 people out there that's kind of wanting to see it work. So let's go take a look, man. Let me give you a little disclaimer here. This ain't the normal way that we do it. Like right now, I haven't back dragged all this stuff that I'm stepping on right now. you want to make sure that you're not stepping on anything that has a tendency to make your foot slip or something like that, where you could slide into the saw or something, you know. So this is kind of just a quick demonstration. Whenever we get ready to cut this weekend, we'll have this all cleaned up and everything, and then we'll have this on forks from the skid loader or one of the other tractors, the L3301, and we'll bring a whole fork full of them up right next to the blade, where there's no wasted movement walking and going getting them like you're going to see me do here. That's not the way we do it, you know. We're just a little more efficient, especially when we have two people. Now, as you can see, this wood's got a couple of years on it sitting out there after it's been cut, and you can see the sapwood, how the sapwood is are really deteriorating. The only really good wood is the heartwood right there. But if we put it in the shed right now, it's going to be fine, you know, whenever we need to burn it. It won't deteriorate any more than what it has now that it's out of the weather, or now that it will be out of the weather. But that's why it was sawing or cutting so quickly and easily. I wish I had a few chunks of good green, fresh green wood, you know, just right off a tree we just cut down. That'd be a much better barometer than this old wood that's got several years of curing already on it. Like I said, this wood here, it needed to be processed right now and put under roof. Another year of it sitting outside, and it'd probably be pretty much worthless to burn anywhere except for in our shop stoves, you know. But at any rate, I think it's going to work just fine, and I think my son-in-law is going to be happy, and I'll be happy as long as he's cutting wood. You know what I mean? I got plenty of other things to keep me busy, but I'll probably come out and kind of help him a little bit, you know. He's a good boy, but I can't abuse him that bad, you know. After all, like I say, he took my daughter off my hands, or at least one of them. So I tell you what, I think we're going to just go ahead and wrap this up. This is supposed to be a quick, simple little video to show you all how I service this thing, get it ready, and it turned into a little bit more than that. And for that, I apologize. But we've done just about all that we can do. And so you know what? This Tractorman 44, and I am out of here. Now, you know, I hear people argue all the time about how much they can cut so much more quickly with a chainsaw and all that, you know, than what we can with these old buzz saws. But and you know, that's just a difference of opinion. They probably can, you know, young guys, you know, they got all the energy in the world, got all the strength. I used to be like that too, you know. But I've always been convinced if there's an easier way to do it, by golly, I'm gonna jump on it. And we've been processing firewood like this since I was just a little bitty shaver, and we'd saw slabs off the sawmill, you know, my God, you know, just literally by the thousands, you know, and that can be somewhat of a trick. Sometimes those slabs be 16, 18 inches, so you have to get a technique for getting them across that blade. And that's tough for a little guy, you know. I was always on the tail end, or I was the off bearer, you know what I mean. But at any rate, doesn't matter. Yeah, you can process a lot with the chainsaw, but you know, you have a chance of running your guide bar tip, you know, in the dirt and all that kind of stuff. And then you got all that bending over and stooping over and everything. I just don't like it, don't enjoy it. We'll spend the time in the woods to knock the branches off, the leaves off the branches and twigs and everything, and then we'll haul home the whole the whole pile of wood, and we'll get 6 or 8 cuts in one branch, you know what I'm saying? So we bring those home, make a pole-wood pile like you see stacked behind me there, and then we back this right up to it, and then, or actually back this right up to the woodshed, bring those over on the forks on the skid loader or another tractor, and then one pass, boom, right straight into the woodshed. The next thing it's stacked, and the next step it's carried in the house and burnt. So no kneeling down, none of that crazy stuff. You know, still a lot of bending over, but you know, everything you do's got work involved. You know, it's just I like to do the least amount of it possible. You know, because you know, like my old man always said, give a hard job to a lazy guy, and he'll show you an easy way to get it done. You know, and I subscribe to that theory, and I don't like to work real hard unless I have to. You know. And I think those days hopefully are behind me. But at any rate, I said this a minute ago, you know, but this time I mean it. This Tractor Man 44, and I am out of here.